Hey guys, so today I'm going to teach you guys how to build Tearlment. So, first off, we don't want to put in any copies of Kit Kalos. As you can see, Kit Kalos is an SR card, and it's just like, what? We don't have any copies of Polymerization, so how do we even summon Kit Kalos anyways, right? Well, I guess you can still summon it with your, like, Tearlament effects, but, like, why would you do that? This is clearly an SR card. When you have these two UR fusion cards, you have Rukelos and you have Kaleido Heart. So why would you bother summoning Kit Kalos? That's ridiculous. In fact, I'm pretty sure they put Kit Kalos at 1 because it was such a bad card that they didn't want to see you summon it more than once a turn, like, if at all. Like, don't play Kit Kalos, like, what? And same with these tier names. They have Merly at 2, Sharon 2, Avnis 2. Because you don't really want to be playing these, and Konami's trying to help you out. That's why they're putting these cards at 2. It's not because they're good. Don't get twisted. So, we just play one of Avnis, I guess, one of Merly, and one of Sharon. And then Rhino Heart. That's the good one. This is the best tier name. So that's why we should play just 3 copies of Rhino Heart. And this is the best form of removal in the game currently. Just flipping a monster face down. What does a monster face down? What can you do with that? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You cannot even fusion summon with it, obviously, right? So if a monster is flipped face down, you can't attack it. Or, I mean, you can't attack with it. And also, you can't do anything with it, basically, right? And it's worse than being banished or being in the graveyard or whatever via, like, destruction can trigger stuff. But if you just flip it face down, it's just gone, basically, until the next turn. So, the card that's flipped face down basically doesn't exist unless your opponent, like, destroys it themselves, which is honestly pretty roundabout and awkward to do because a lot of cards actually don't allow you to destroy your own cards. They usually say something like destroy or negate a card your opponent controls. And that's primarily what a lot of the cards do nowadays. So we max out on Meta Noise. And this can add back your copy of Rhino Heart from the graveyard so you can summon Rhino Heart again. And of course your Tearlament cards will shuffle themselves back, so it's completely just great. But you don't really want to run Solik, because Solik adds a Tearlament monster from your deck to your hand, which is not particularly useful, honestly, because we already have enough ways into Rhino Heart that there's no way we need more ways into Rhino Heart. We also don't really care for Tearlament Scream. Scream, I don't know why you would run Scream. So, I mean, whatever. Scream doesn't really do much for you. It adds a Tearlament trap. I don't really see, like, I guess 1 would be maybe okay, but it's just add, like, Meta Noise. So, I wouldn't really care about that, but Tearlament's Grief is pretty, like, alright. So, we'll put in 3 copies of Tearlament's Grief, and Grief allows us to summon our copy of Rhino Heart. So, we just have to send a monster we control to the graveyard with the same type or attribute. So, in the case of Rhino Heart, we need to send a water or a warrior monster, which is another reason we don't really want to run more copies of, like, Merly, Havnis, or Shirin. None of them coincide with Rhino Heart here, so we cannot send them to summon Rhino Heart, which just sucks, honestly. Like, I don't know why people are saying Tear is so good, or whatever. Clearly sucks. We don't have enough ways into Rhino Heart, clearly. So, then we do have Heartbeat, which is basically just MST, which is just like spell trap removal, which is good, so we just max out on it. And this actually can out like a Runic Fountain, even if it has some protection, because, well, primarily they will Hugin to add the runic fountain. So this will work just fine, and there are no issues whatsoever. So reinforcement of the army, we want to add a copy of that. This is just like an additional copy of Tearlament's Rhino Heart. So Rhino Heart has a bit of a weird typing, which makes it a little awkward to play, but being a warrior means we can summon Rhino Heart off of Isolde, which is great. But now, because we're running Isolde, of course, we need to run more warriors. And also, we need to send equip spells from our deck specifically to the graveyard. So we need to add some equip spells, which we will do shortly. And it's not a big deal. But before that, instead of you running like Kit Kellis, we're going to run a different card. Instead, we are going to run a Hexield, because they're just better, straight up. Like, when we have these available, why would we bother? Let's see. Are these all of the Hexields? Let's see, you can substitute to this card for any one fusion. Okay. Yeah, it's just these three. Okay. And then there is also King of the Swamp, which gives us polymerization as well, but we don't necessarily need to do this. So instead, let's go Muddy Mud Dragon, and then this is more accessible than like King of the Swamp, Hexield Fusion, or the Dark Hexield Fusion. Like, just all these different cards here that can substitute a material. They are just worse than Muddy Mud Dragon, because this is our extra deck card, so in our combo we'll always be able to access Muddy Mud Dragon, and then we can use a copy of, we will run Albion, and then we will also run Lubellion. The reason being, like, if we summon Albion, like, on our first turn, we can then shuffle back the same material and summon, like, another copy of the monster we made with, like, Albion, for example, by, like, shuffling back the same materials. And because of that, boom, 2 copies of these tier cards. And yeah, that's basically just how it goes. And of course we'll probably make New Jade. Well, potentially. Because we can also, when we shuffle back, we can shuffle back our copy of Mud Dragon and a copy of our, like, Rukalis or Glidoheart or whatever, which also works. And yeah, that's good. So we need to run warrior monsters now, so let's go ahead and grab some warrior monsters. But Rhino Heart is kind of weird in the sense that there aren't any warrior monsters like it, which is interesting. Like, if we go water warrior like this, then you'll notice that we have, like, Neospacian Aqua Dolphin, which is pretty decent, all things considered. This just rips a card out of your opponent's hand if it meets these conditions. So we can run 1 copy of Neospacian Aqua Dolphin, and this can just check for, like, certain cards. And it's just in general useful. So let me see. Yeah, there's basically no good water warrior monsters, as you can see here. Probably, like, these 2 are the best ones. Yep. Like, the legendary fisherman 2 is just, yeah, I don't see that ever coming into play, right? So then we go, like, Neospacian, Neospacian connector, like this. Oh, actually it's not. Is that not what it was called? It was a Neospacian of some kind. Hold on, we'll find it. I'll figure this out somehow. Alright, where is it? Wasn't it Neospacian connector? Yeah. No, it was Neo Space Connector. Alright, it's not Neospatian. Okay. But when you normal summon this card, you can special summon a Neospatian monster or elemental hero Neos from your hand or deck in the defense position. And then you attribute this card, target a Neospatian monster or one elemental hero Neos in your graveyard, special summon it in defense position. So, the interesting part of this is soft once per turn. So, with Neospatian Aqua Dolphin, what we can do is we can summon it off of Neospace Connector, and then we can use this as like material for, like, for example, on our Isolde, and then we can go ahead and use Neospace Connector to summon back Neospatian Aqua Dolphin and potentially rip a card out of our opponent's hand, like a second one, and that can go crazy. Of course, just ripping cards out of your opponent's hand, that's up. But like, as little extras, sometimes your opponents are running like cards that are hard to out if you need like non-targeted removal. You can actually also put in a copy of Neospatian Granmole. This is a bit of a garnet, but it's a good tech because we're going to be running Neospace Connector and we have Rhoda, and we can also just add this off of our Isolde for like another turn to summon the Granmole to out like whatever. Like, this is crazy. And this doesn't allow like graveyard effects to trigger, like for example Crusadia Avramax. Avramax specifically has a lot of protection, so a lot of people will make Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avramax with like some Link 2 and then IP Masquerena. So when they do that, this becomes non-destructible, and also it's inherently not targetable. See this line here? Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects if it is Link Summon, basically. So, yeah. And then you also won't be able to target other monsters for attacks, aside from like Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avramax. So, for example, if your opponent's playing like those super weak sprite cards, like they're pretty low stats, they're level 2 monsters, so obviously you wouldn't be able to attack them to clear them because of Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avramax. But if you have Granmole, of course, you can Granmole back the Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avramax back to the extra deck, and this essentially costs like 4 monsters to make, so for them to make it again is not super likely, in my opinion. Because it also requires to use monster special summon from the extra deck, so if, for example, your opponent summons Sprite Elf and then IP Masquerena back, they would not be able to use IP Masquerena and Sprite Elf to make Crusadia Avramax again, because the IP Masquerena got summoned back from the graveyard instead of the extra deck. So the other notable effect here is that if this Link Summon card you control is sent to your graveyard by an opponent's card, you can shuffle one card on the field into the deck, but Neospatian Granmole will actually return itself and Crusadia Avramax back to the quote-unquote hand, but Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avramax will just be put back to the extra deck, in which case its effect and protection is not relevant at all against our Godsend card here, Neospatian Granmole. And in fact, in the latest event that's come out, they actually banned Block Dragon, but if you noticed, the actual reason why, you might be thinking, oh, it's because of Adamancipator or whatever. No. No one cares about Adamancipator. Did you notice anything funny about Granmole? Oh, it's a rock? That's right. You can search Neospatian Granmole off of Block Dragon, which is completely disgusting, as you know. This is basically every single turn you can return a card to your opponent's hand during like the damage at the start of the damage step here. It'll like just do that, right? So this outs extra deck monsters in a disgusting fashion, because whenever you summon Neospatian Granmole, you're just normal summoning like one monster, right? But like, let's say for example with Mirror Jade here, if our opponent has a Mirror Jade, right? not only does the effect when it leaves the field not trigger because it gets returned to the extra deck, but this actually requires like 2 or 3 monsters essentially to make. But I just normal summon Neospatian Grand Mole, which is completely broken. It's disgusting. So if you use Block Dragon, of course, it's just another way to search Neospatian Grand Mole, and they're just reducing the consistency of which you can find Neospatian Grand Mole. Because what you can do is you can go Gallant Granite and get like Block Dragon to add like Neospatian Grand Mole and some other stuff. Doesn't really matter what else you're adding, honestly, but Neospatian Grand Mole is gonna do it. It's gonna just completely obliterate your opponent. It's like a tier 0 card, pretty much. I don't know. People just haven't caught on yet. If you haven't seen it yet, it's because it's going to be more prevalent during the upcoming meta. I think people just forgot to put Neospatian Grand Mole into the deck. You know, it just happens. Sometimes when you're deck building, for example, you forget to put in Called by the Grave or Forbidden Droplet, and then you get hit by a situation where it's like, oh, that's right. I didn't put in that card, silly me, so I get max 8 here and I lose because I forgot to put in my copies of Ash Blossom and Called by Whoopsie Daisies, you know? So, yeah. But anyways, back to building this deck, we need equip spells, so we typically want equip spells that will be good in the graveyard, but just whatever's fine, really. Just generic good equip spells that even if we open wouldn't be too much of an issue are fine. So, like, Living Fossil, for example, would also be pretty decent. So what we can do is, with our copies of Ash Blossom, which is a staple you should be playing, of course, right? Let's say Ash Blossom. My opponent, I can then Living Fossil back my copy of Ash Blossom, and then I can make with my Neospatian Aqua Dolphin a copy of Muddy Mudragon, which allows me to make like Lubellion or like an Albion potentially. So then we're doing better here in the situation, and then we can start going into these the tier extra deck monsters, I guess, yeah. And also, I forgot, we should be running 2 copies of Isolde, not 1. And let's throw in Ghost Spell as well. So, yeah, we're looking a little bit better. So now, let's see, we also want to run a few more of some other cards. Namely, let's start looking at the equip spells. So let's see, we have Living Fossil, but that is not enough. Let's see, Dragon Nail. Yeah, that's not going to cut it. This equips only to a dark monster, and then it can no longer be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, which is overall pretty good. So actually, yeah. Just because there's some Destruction Protection. Destruction Protection can never be all that bad, right? And then we have Psychic Blade. Psychic Blade is pretty whatever. Instead of Psychic Blade, I guess, we could also, let's see. Oh, Connect Charging Cell is not useful. Let's see, what was the card I was thinking of? Yeah. We should add, Moon Mirror Shield. A copy of Moon Mirror Shield can never hurt, because then, with the Moon Mirror Shield, we can beat over any monster our opponent possibly summons. Because with Moon Mirror Shield, during damage calc, you'll have like higher attack than your opponent's consistently, and higher attack than their defense consistently as well, allowing you to clear just about any monster that's beatable via battle, I guess, right? And then Horn of Light. This card actually is pretty good because this actually just stops you from being decked out. So if you keep sending Horn of Light from your field to the graveyard, you pay 500 life points to return it, but we already have a lot of equipped spells, so we're running out of room, so we can't afford to run it. It would be nice to be able to run Horn of Light, but I guess you might be able to cut, like, Dragon Nail for it, but we'll just run Dragon Nail here because we are... Oh, wait. Kalos is water? Actually, then we don't need the Dragon Nail. Yeah, we can put in the Unicorn Horn then instead. The Horn of Light. This is a Unicorn Horn, I'm pretty sure. But I mean, I can't confirm. It could be any kind of horn. Well, whatever. And then I am forgetting something important. I can't remember exactly what it was. But there is some kind of card that pops off pretty hardly. Well, whatever the case. How many equip spells are we up to now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we need, like, closer to 8, actually. So let's go add a copy of Smoke Grenade. And then we can add a copy of, let's see, what was it called again? If we want good discards, we can add, like, Curse Bamboos to just add the Golden Bamboo or Broken Bamboo, it doesn't really matter what, and then we can discard those. So that's like a thing you can just do, but we really should be adding more warrior names to start, which I will start off with adding Shade Brigandine. Shade Brigandine is not bad at all. So we'll add a copy of this. And then let's add like a copy of Baguska before I forget. Baguska is just good overall, of course. And I believe we don't need to run 2 copies of Lucalos though, because we will recycle with our copy of Lubellion. So it's really not a big deal at all. But there wasn't a quick spell I was forgetting. Oh, right. The Noble Knight Arms, right? Okay. So, where is it? Let me find it. This one. And for Noble Arms Durendal, this allows us to add a level 5 or lower fire warrior monster. And in this case, we will add our copy of Renaud. Renaud is just a decent target to summon anyways off of like Isolde. If we wanted to, we can use that to add a copy of like Mild, well not Mild, I guess one of our Scent equip spells. So I think that's enough. And we will have to go over 40 cards, which is not an issue. I think, right? We're perfectly chillin'. So we should add a copy of Foolish Burial. And then these are all warriors, right? So we can just send these to summon Rhino Heart. And if there were good water monsters, we should play them as well, is probably what you were thinking. And yes, of course, there are good targets here. So actually, we have this card here, Water Enchantress of the Temple, which allows us to also summon a, right, our adventure token, and this will allow us to add Illegal Knight, which is pretty chill. Or we can do a Griffin Rider. And this is pretty solid because we have Draco back, we have Dunnel, and then we have our Starlit Papillon, which are pretty good. So we'll just put in a copy of One Winged Griffin Rider and a copy of Illegal Knight, as these guys are pretty good. And we can also, if we want, add Magicore Warrior of the Relics, as this is a warrior. This synergizes with our cards, because we don't need to normal summon for effect, we just need to normal summon a monster, and then we can just tribute it, or actually it's not a tribute. We can send to the graveyard our card that we normal summoned. We don't need to activate its effect, and then we can use that to special summon a copy of our Rhino Heart. And it doesn't say same name, actually, for our copy of Tearlament's Grief, so we can actually send from our fields a copy of Rhino Heart to summon Rhino Heart to activate Rhino Heart without needing like to worry about the restriction of Rite of Aramesir here, which is you cannot activate the effects of monsters on the field the turn you activate this card except special summon monsters. And you might be thinking, but wait, what if I want to activate my Neospatian Grand Mole? Don't worry about it, because you'll be activating Rite of Aramesir on your first turn, which you don't have a battle phase anyway, so you can save your normal summon for Neospatian Grand Mole the next turn, and when you enter the battle phase then, you'll be able to activate your Grand Mole no problem. So you're perfectly fine in that regard, so don't worry about it. But anyways, let's see. You can special summon this card from your hand, and then this adds a... No, it sets a trap that mentions adventure token. So like Breath of Resurrection. This special summons up to 2 monsters from hand and or graveyard with different names, which is pretty good actually. So we'll actually put this in, and a copy of Magicore Warrior of the Relic, and just in case, of course, we don't want our opponent, like, because we have a pretty sizey adventure engine, we don't want our opponent to actually remove all our copies of Fateful Adventure, so we'll play 2. And you can also run 2 Draco back in case you're worried about not being able to recover your Draco back. But with Breath of Resurrection, you should be able to recover your Draco backs or whatever as well. If you're worried about that, instead I would recommend, instead of playing more copies of Draco back, to play more copies of Breath of Resurrection, unless you just want to like open your Draco back, which is still good honestly. And then let's see, this just Thunder Discharge also works, and this destroys as many monsters that your opponent controls with less attack. So this is just a good tech option to also have. So with Magicore Warrior of the Relic, because it is a warrior, we'll actually run 2 copies of it. It's also a fire warrior, which synergizes with our copy of, well, our card here, Infernoble Arms Durendal, meaning we can actually add Magicore Warrior, our Magicore Warrior of the Relics, which is pretty good. And then there's like one other fire monster that's pretty good to run, so we will run that as well. We will run 3 copies of Sublimation Knight, and then we will run a copy of how do I spell this? It's like something like this, right? Damn, I forgot the A. So Squeak Knight. So if we normal summon Sublimation Knight, we can then equip Squeak Knight, and then we can special summon our copy of Squeak Knight to make Isolde, and then we can send our equip spells, of course, so we can special summon the Rhino Heart, and then we can get started on our combo here. And then we just need to put in a few more tuners. In this case, we'll go with Ghost Mourner because it's the right level. We can't run like Effect Veiler, for example, because if we were to summon back Effect Veiler, we don't have a level 5 monster to use to make Mud Dragon with, which makes it pointless. Why would we run Effect Veiler then? Like, I don't know. We can do 3 with 3 though to make Mud Dragon, and that will allow us to potentially get into our Mirror Jade when the time comes, I guess. So when the time comes, you'll know, I guess. And it just goes pretty hard. No other way to phrase it, I guess. And it's kind of just, So I guess we could change the ratios a bit, like maybe we could change out a copy of Meta Noise for like a copy of Mirror Force. Like Mirror Force normally isn't that great, it just destroys, right? So that doesn't do as much as, for example, a copy of Storming Mirror Force or a copy of Drowning Mirror Force, which will shuffle instead of destroy or add back to hand. So this is also a good form of removal, of course, so of course consider that. And of course we won't run Grass is Greener because our deck doesn't really have like a super good synergy with the graveyard, straight up, like. So if we send too many equip spells, of course our Isolde won't be able to special summon our like copy of whatever we need, I guess. Like for example, if we want to summon our Rhinoheart, we won't be able to do so, and that's just a tragedy. So of course we will run as well our copy of Access Code, Unicorn, our copy of let's see, what was it called? Hold up. Alright, yeah. Well, let's see, we'll just run IP Masquerena for now, of course. And then, let's see. We also, because we're running so many warriors, right? I believe we can run a Kashik. A Kashik, if our opponent doesn't play around zones, will allow us to add their cards back to the hand. Kinda like Grand Mole effect, which is just insane. This is just extra deck Grand Mole, but it would be too powerful if it was just the Grand Mole. So it also, of course, needs to point to the monster that we're trying to return. So if that isn't proof of how strong of an effect Grand Mole has, I don't know what is. So I don't want to see any doubters in the comments, alright? So then, let's see. We have one more slot in our extra deck, so we gotta make it count. So we have to consider everything very carefully now. And alright, I think the correct answer is to add a Warrior Link monster, so let us just check what other Warrior Link monsters we have, in case I'm forgetting any. So Bardiche is not bad. Lackluster Soldier of Chaos is not bad as well. Wonder Driver, Curious. We're going to not be able to summon Curious in our list, I suppose. Arcana Extra Joker. Okay. When this link summon card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one level 4 warrior normal monster from your deck. And add a level 4 warrior monster from your deck to your hand. Maybe we should adjust in the future our list to run Arcana Extra Joker. As you can see, that effect would allow us to add our copy of like Rhinoheart, which is pretty insane. So I think that's definitely worth consideration. And then we have Junk Connector, Warrior and or Machine, including a tuner, not necessarily the best. Defender of the Labyrinth, 2 normal monsters. Codebreaker, Virus Swordsman. This is no better than like an Assault, it doesn't really do anything for us. Spiral Double Helix, we can't really make use of that. So just making sure we didn't miss out on any of the good Warrior Link monsters. So now what else do we want? Well, I guess we should put in a copy of Madragon. Madragon isn't spelled like this, but it shows up even if you input it like this. As you can see with this cute baby Madragon. Very, very cute, very wholesome. But anyways, with Madragon of the Swamp, we can declare like a attribute with Madragon of the Swamp, and then our opponent will no longer be able to target any monsters on the field with the same attribute as this card. And this card already is not targetable, so this is pretty insane. So it just essentially makes all your monsters untargetable if they are the same attribute, or whatever. So this pairs especially well with Neospacian Grand Mole, of course, because we can declare Earth, right? And then your opponent will not be able to imperm before like the battle phase, so that you cannot activate Grand Mole effect, because this happens in the damage step as well. The only things that can activate in the damage step in response to Neospacian Grand Mole are cards like Baron de Fleur. which, if they have it, it's they would probably have wasted their negate on something else anyways, because like Master Duel and Yu-Gi-Oh players in general, they just hit yes, you know? They see you do something, yeah, I'll negate that. But they're not ready for the Grand Mole. Like, come on. But this negates activation, so if they actually had the brain power to hold it for your Grand Mole, you know? Instead of, like, for example, maybe, like, negating your Rhino Heart, or your, like, Isolde, whoops, wrong card, Isolde, then, you know, they actually, instead of that, they just hold it for your Grand Mole, then they could negate your Grand Mole, in theory, I guess, because negate activations can trigger, like in the damage step, they can be used in response to, like, whatever, they don't care. But cards that say negate effect are a different story. Those cards cannot activate in the damage step, and just effects like, for example, Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, that cannot be activated in the damage step either. So once it gets to that point, it's too late to stop the Grand Mole. So when we activate Grand Mole, of course, we'll win the duel, because our opponent will be losing in card advantage from this point onwards, and it is not easy for them to out the Grand Mole, because the Grand Mole will either be like on our field during our turn or in our hand during their turn, which makes it ridiculously hard to deal with Grand Mole since it's pretty reoccurring. So it's pretty comparable to something like, for example, a Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, where you have to have a specific out to the Grand Mole, and it's even worse for Grand Mole because Grand Mole just comes out of nowhere, and then you just have to deal with it, and you're just in shambles, you know? No real good way to deal with Grand Mole. I'm trying to think of a way right now, but I can't. Like, Called by the Grave doesn't do it, and because we have Mud Dragon, Impermanence won't do it either, and no one's going to hold Baron for it. And if you have, like, a Therian Regulus, for example, on your end board, you can't negate our copy of Neospacian Grand Mole. This negates, specifically effect, so instead of activation, so you can't activate it, you can't, like, chain that to Grand Mole, so that's kind of doomed. Big L. So, let's see. I think, yeah, this is about the list you want to run if you're a Tearlments player. If you're seeing people run, like, multiple copies of Sharon, Havness, whatever, they're just bad players. It's not something that can be helped, but whatever. You don't really want to max out on these tier names, or, like, yeah, a lot of the tier cards are just bad for various reasons. I won't go too into depth into it for now, but if we run the deck like this, then it allows us to run this adventure package. This was significantly more powerful, in my opinion, because as you can see, we have Water Enchantress that is limited to 1 here, and you can see this is a water, unlike Tearlments Sharon here. So if we normal summon Water Enchantress, of course, we can tribute this, and then add it, well, not tribute, I keep saying that accidentally, we can send to the graveyard our copy of Enchantress, of course, and then add our Rite of Aramis here, and special summon our copy of Tearlments Rhino Heart, which is just insanely good. Just straight up. And yeah, that's about all I have for you guys today, I guess. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.